All right. Well, welcome, friends. My name is Lindsey Carroll, and I am the Marine Education Coordinator with Oregon Sea Grant. And I coordinate all kinds of fun education programming out of Hatfield Marine Science Center, which is where I am right now. And so we're so thrilled to bring you all kinds of fun critters and tours from our labs here at Hatfield. And so we're going to be exploring, this is our last of 3 live animal interactions. We've explored the sea anemone, the sea cucumber, and now we're going to explore the Tidepool Sculpin. And so we're exploring these animals that live in the Rocky Intertidal. So very excited to do this last live animal interaction. Before we get started, for those of us that might be joining for the first time, welcome. All participants are going to be muted because this is a webinar format. And so you may use the chat, which is located at the bottom of your screen. Open that up for us and use the chat to submit questions to us at any time. Kate's going to go ahead and let me know when we have questions from our audience. And then you can also answer. So if we ask questions of you, we're trying to make this as interactive as possible. Go ahead and use the chat to answer questions of us, and Kate will tell me what you are saying. And so I keep saying Kate. So Kate's my other educator here helping us out today. So Kate, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everybody. Good to see you.
Thanks, Kate. And we also have Shannon Reed here for tech support. So also use the chat if you're having any technical issues. And so we're going to zoom you from wherever you are to the coast, to the Oregon coast, and we're going to explore a critter from the tide pools, the Rocky Intertidal. So Rocky Intertidal is just a nice, fun science word that explains the type or describes the tide pools. And so to kind of set that stage, we're going to have Kate launch a quick video that's going to zoom us to the tide pools. And so if you, this is our way of saying, okay, let's see, we've got all kinds of pooling water and rocks. And so rocks, in terms of Rocky Intertidal, we get its name here from the fact that there's lots of rocks. And so intertidal means in between the tides. And so that you can see the waves crashing back behind those rocks. And so that means that that's low tide. So there's 4 tides throughout the day, and there's 2 low tides and 2 high tides. And so this is a very dynamic, ever-changing environment, right? So you've got times where it's flooded, and that's where there's all kinds of oxygen-rich food all spread out, all in that water at high tide. And then at low tide, you see these exposed rocks and these pools that are left behind. And so the animals that live here have to have adaptations. So it's like a structure, whether it's like a body part or a behavior such as hiding, in order to survive in this environment. Because at high tide, these animals are going to be prone to predation by marine animals. Or at low tide, that means those land-based predators like seagulls might try to feast on some of these critters. So these critters have to have adaptations in order to survive in this very dynamic environment. So thank you for showing that video, Kate, zooming us to the tide pools. And so now we have a good idea of where we are on the coast. We're going to go ahead and shift the camera so that we can zoom and look at our last animal. Our last animal here. So let's see. I said we were going to be checking out Tidepool Sculpins. Can we by chance find our Tidepool Sculpins? And if we can't, maybe we think about why we can't. How many? Go ahead and type into the chat how many Sculpin you see. And so I will tell you that we've got mussel clumps with some barnacles, but we're looking for Tidepool Sculpin. Kate, do we have anything in the chat telling us?
No, we don't have anyone writing in the chat just yet about whether they can see evidence of any Tidepool Sculpin, which is a type of fish in the water. Somebody says they see one. And if you have comments, again, we're using the chat to try and, I really see one now too.
Oh, I'm trying to use my pipette here.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, are you pointing to it there?
I was a little tricky, friends, so I might help you. So this is to kind of show off how wonderful Tidepool Sculpin are at hiding. So you can probably see, here's one moving around towards the top here. Okay.
Down near the bottom for us.
In order for us to see this better, see, I did this on purpose. I'm going to go ahead and put a white background. So bear with me as I transition. And we're going to zoom this back in with a white background. All right.
Oh,
so
it's much easier to see.
Now, how many Tidepool Sculpin can you see?
So we
See
can
what I-
only see part of your dish. So some of our fish might be hiding.
Would
in
it
the
help if I
corners.
turn it sideways?
No, I mean, I think just sort of sliding it back and forth. Oh, actually, never
help?
mind. That's great.
All right, look at us moving in action here. So now see how many Tidepool Sculpin you can find. I see one swimming around. Okay.
Okay. JBC's 2.
Ooh, we see 2.
Mhm.
What if I told you there's 3? And there was one hiding right under here.
Oh! So it's underneath the mussel clump?
Yeah, so they love to hide. So I'm going to take some of their habitat out just for a second, just so we can get a little closer look at them.
Yep.
And so I wanted to kind of mimic what a tide pool might look like, but now I'm going to take away some of their hiding places because they love to hide. And then you're going to be able to see that there are 3 Tidepool Sculpin. And so I'm going to leave some of this sea lettuce in there.
For
But see the
prettiness.
3
yeah.
Tidepool Sculpin. And it may be hard to tell, but do they all look the same color? Maybe Cait can help interpret. Do they all look the same color?
What color are these fish? No. That's
No.
one of the responses. They do not look all the same color or
Oh.
patterns. If you look carefully, some of the fish have more patterns to them, whether it's stripes or blotches. One looks
Right.
striped is a comment. One person says gray, pinkish, and brown. I think one of those colors is for each of fish. They do
Right.
not look
So
the same.
if I were to put this in, this is a rock that has some coralline algae on it. And there is do you think all of the Sculpin might blend in if they're really good at camouflage? So we noticed at the beginning that they're really good at camouflage.
Mhm.
So do you think all of the Sculpin are going to be able to blend into this rock? What if I put it next to this one that's swimming towards the surface?
Yeah, it's kind of pink, the same color
Yeah.
as that pink coralline
Oh,
algae.
look at it. It's almost like it's doing what I want it to. Good job, Sculpin. It has a little bit of pinkish coloration towards the top. And so then when I put the rock here, it blends in, right? And so Tidepool Sculpin are notorious for their camouflage, their different colors. This Sculpin right here that's nice at the surface is got some pink. Oh, it's eating some things. Ooh, we'll talk about that soon. And then if I were to put some mussel clumps in here, maybe the darker colored, maybe the one in the corner here might blend in. So they come all different colors. They're great at camouflaging. They can change color. But yes, they don't all look the same. And I'm going to go ahead and try to put our view on the side here so that maybe we can try to see some of their fins. So bear with me as I move to the side and show you some of their fins. So give me just a second. And so Sculpin have really big pectoral fins. And so when we think about fish, they are fins. So it's going to be sideways, kind of wonky. What does that look like, Cait?
Oh, that's interesting. Now I do have to tilt my head to the left to be able to see it because it is sideways.
Okay, all right.
I hadn't considered that.
We are trying
And-
new things with our new technology here at Hatfield Marine Science Center.
Yeah,
So-
we were trying to get the side view. Oh, actually, so we can see the part that's closest to you, but not the part that's farthest away. We can see this little, there, that's perfect.
Okay. Well,
But we all have to tilt our heads to the
oh, that's
left.
fun. Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
We can all turn our heads sideways.
And I
All
can
right,
see
so-
3 fish in one view because one's behind the rock.
Yeah. So we're seeing how they love to hide. And so, yes. So then I just wanted to show you some of their fins. And so they have these huge pectoral fins, the ones on the side of their bodies. And so they use these really big fins to crawl over rocks. Do you know of many fish that can crawl? So I'm going to go ahead and switch our view since we don't want to crank our necks,
Right.
turning them to the side. We're just trying some new things here at Hatfield with our new technology. All right.
So we
how does
we
that?
have noticed the spiky fin on the top too, the dorsal fin.
Ooh,
So they've got
yes.
the dorsal fin and they've got pectoral fins, one on each side that they wave
Yes.
around quite a bit to crawl over or the rocks. And then they have the caudal fin, which is the tail fin, which can make them go quite fast if they want to.
Right. So thank you for reviewing all of those fins. Those pectoral fins are the ones on the side. So you can see on the left here,
Yes.
Big fin sticking to the side, they're nice and wide. So that's going to use, the Sculpin's going to use that to crawl over the rocks and the muscle clumps. That dorsal fin is nice and spiky, right? And they've got a long extended fin here toward the tail fin before you get to the caudal fin, right? So very cool. But one thing we're noticing too, they have,
Oh,
Can you hear me now? Can you still hear
Yes.
me? Because our microphone took a dive. All right. So the microphone was jealous of all of the fun we're having. And so you can still hear me, right, Kate?
yeah, you sound a little different. So just hold it up close to your mouth.
I'm just going to hold it.
Yeah.
All right. And so what was I saying about the fins?
You were talking
Oh,
about
yes,
the other
they-
things we can see.
They like to move around, but do you notice how they're actually sitting in place right now? They're not moving.
Somebody actually
actually-
noticed that in the chat
Yeah.
and wondered if not moving and staying still or even like playing dead is one of their defenses. Because that striped one earlier wasn't moving at all, even though the others were swimming around the dish. The striped one was just hoping you wouldn't notice it was there by staying very still.
Right. So I'm not going to touch them right now. They
Mhm.
are sitting and hanging out and they're waiting. They are sit and wait ambush predators. So we did notice them swimming around at the beginning, but now they're sitting and hanging out. This is typical behavior for the Sculpin. This is where they really they like to hang out. And so they're sit and wait ambush predators. So they wait for what their food source is. And we'll talk about what that is. It's like small crustaceans, which are like crabs and shrimp, small shellfish, right? And so they wait for those to come close by and then they jump, they ambush them and they feed on them. So they do like to sit still. And now also, since they're sitting still, can we see things that are flapping on the side of their heads?
There was someone who noticed that and mentioned it in the chat. It looks near their face. It looks like it's moving as if they were drinking water. Why do they do that?
Yes.
What's going on there?
Well, they actually are drinking water, right? So does anybody have any guesses of what that is? What is that is flapping? Does anybody want to write in the chat and tell us what they think that might be? What is the fish doing?
Many people are all typing in the word gills.
Oh, sweet. Yep. We've got some gills. Fantastic. And so we had the sea cucumber had a respiratory tree, right, that removes oxygen from the water. And now our fish, which is a vertebrate, okay, so it's a vertebrate, it's in phylum vertebrate. And so we want to also note that it has a skeleton on the inside. But yes, you're seeing those gills, those gill flap, that's the operculum flap. And that's water flowing through the gills. So if you can see sorry, there's a little bit of a glare, but if you can see a fish in view, can we maybe count how many respirations the fish is taking?
The one we were focused on is kind of underneath the muscle clump now. So it's a
There
little
we
more
go. How about the
challenging.
one towards the top of the screen?
Mhm.
Can
So
we by
vertebrate
chance-
means that these animals have bones, unlike the other two animals we had talked about. They have
Right.
a backbone. They're bony fishes. And
Are bony
they get
fishes.
oxygen from the water by bringing water across their gills and pumping them through. And you can actually see the sides moving. So they have a respiration rate. So if you count how many times they're
Is it too hard to see this one? It's really nice and nestled up into the muscle clump, which is a great show of its camouflage and its hiding, but
hiding.
not great for breathing, counting. And
We had
so-
another question about
Yes.
the size of these animals. How big do these Sculpin get? So these are adults and really they don't get much bigger than this. Their maximum size is about 3.5 inches. and
Yeah,
when-
that's not big.
When I've been to the tide pools here on the Oregon coast, they often are very much smaller, but it, depends on the time of year and, but they don't get much larger than the largest one in this dish.
Right. Yeah, they're very small. They're used to being, they're typically around this size, just a little bit bigger. They prey on, or their predators are other fish, birds. Remember I told you about how during low tide, those land-based predators, so birds like to prey on Sculpin, crows, great blue herons. So it's interesting that a lot of their predators are land-based versus in the ocean. So it's an interesting comment. And as Kate was talking about, they are vertebrates. So the Rocky Intertidal area, the tide pools, are well known for all the invertebrates. And so this is our one example of a vertebrate, those bony fishes.
So there are a couple more questions, and we're having
Yeah.
reports that it's kind of hard to hear you sometimes. So I'm going to answer a couple of these, I think, which is one of them is how is their breathing affected at low tide when they are trapped in a tide pool without that fresh oxygen coming in? And that's a good point, because a lot of the animals that are stuck to a rock, the invertebrates that are stuck to a rock, when the tide goes out, if the water goes with it, sometimes the animals are on a place on a rock where they're exposed to the air and there's no water around them anymore. But Tidepool Sculpin don't really want to be in that position. They need to be in the water all the time, even if the tide is out. So that's why they're really in the pools part of the tide pools, in the water. But if the tide has gone out and it's a beautiful sunny day like it is today, and the sun is shining down on them, and it can change the habitat in that tide pool for the hours that they're there until the tide comes back in with its cold, salty, oxygenated water. So the tide pool might warm up, but these animals can actually tolerate changes in temperature. They can tolerate changes in salinity. So if you think they're in a tide pool and then it rains a lot in the tide pool, that's going to change the salinity where it could be less salty because you're adding all this fresh rainwater to it, but they can tolerate that. So they can tolerate ranges in salinity and temperature for those few hours while they're waiting for the tide to come back in. And so they have adaptations to be able to live with that situation. And the other question we had was, let me see.
Real quick, while you're scanning, Kate, can you hear me?
Yes.
So while we're scanning, I have krill.
Oh, good. That was another question. How do they eat?
I have some krill in my pipette, and I'm a meanie. I took away all their hiding places. So I'm going to drop some krill into our container here, and I am going to see if they're interested in.
I see some movement there.
Yeah, let me know if I need to move the container around so that way we can see them eating easier.
Well,
there's two in view right here.
All right, let's just not disturb the surface and just gently see this the gray one. We can see barely at the bottom of the screen. We can only see the one right now.
Okay, let me shift they like to dart over to the side of the tank that I don't have in.
Oh, the gray one moved back to see.
There you go.
Oh, are they eating? Is that middle one taking a bite?
Yes, we have this one in the middle, just bent down and ate that piece of krill. Yummy,
it's hard to tell what's food and what's just debris.
Yes, but they may also eat other things that, they might scavenge across the ground on the bottom. Mm-hmm. But yeah, what other things eat krill that we think of in the marine world?
But not in tide pools necessarily?
Not in tide pools, yeah. Have we heard of krill before? It's a type of plankton. Let's see.
Oh, lots of people are suggesting that whales eat krill.
Oh my goodness. Did we by chance hear that from our speaker this morning that was talking about
and
genetics
more
of
specifically baleen whales. They have specialized feeding structures in their mouths to filter that plankton out and get enough of it so they can support that giant body.
Yes.
Crabs might eat plankton was a suggestion. Actually, lots of things eat krill and plankton. That's why there's so much of it, because it's sort of the base, one of the lower parts of the food chain.
So I'm going to pick this up real quick so maybe you can get a closer look, and then we got to wrap up because we're basically.
It's 1:10. Somebody wants to know how long Tidepool Sculpin live. I don't remember if I asked or answered that question, but they live to be about 5 years.
Yeah, they can live up to 5 years. Yeah, so relatively small in size. I'm just thinking about how size might impact how long something might live. But they're also in a very dynamic environment. So if it dries out and they're susceptible to those seagulls, they are pesky. Sometimes they just don't give up. So yeah, I can say lots of potential challenges in the tide pool environment.
Great. What's coming up next in Marine Science Day?
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to sit myself back down here. Thank you for joining us for our last live animal interaction. Ooh, our camera. And so we had a thrill exploring different critters, the sea anemone, the sea cucumber, and the Tidepool Sculpin. So thanks for joining us for our last live animal interaction for Marine Science Day. We do encourage you to go to the shark dissection that is happening here soon. So thank you so much.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you here at Hatfield soon. Bye.